Take a look at this chart. Something surprising is happening. Samsung is finally clawing back market share in the US. When I lived in New York, Samsung threw the craziest launch parties with Kanye West and gave out free phones as we left the party. But even then, I didn't actually know anyone who used a Samsung. Fast forward to today and things are changing. Apple has not been innovating while Samsung is winning the attention with its foldable devices. See, for more than 10 years, Apple's been dominating the US. The iPhone became a status symbol, a culture, an ecosystem, and of course, the blue bubble. But in just one quarter of 2025, Apple's US market share dropped from 56% to 49%, while Samsung jumped from 23% to 31%. That's one of the biggest swings we've seen. And here's the scary part for Apple. If it's losing this much ground in its home market, what happens globally? Outside of America, Apple isn't just fighting Samsung, it's up against Huawei, Xiaomi, and other Chinese companies that are pumping out insane phones at way lower prices. See, in South America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, Apple doesn't have that same cultural grip that it does here in the US. So what is happening? Why are more Americans suddenly switching to Samsung? And is this just the beginning of Apple's biggest threat yet? Let's start with the numbers. In Q2 of this year, Samsung's US sales grew 38%. So that's one of the strongest quarters in its history, while Apple saw its share dip. So Apple still does control over half of the US market, which is impressive when you consider how fragmented Android is. Back in 2014, Apple and Samsung were locked in a battle for the US smartphone crown. Samsung had the edge with its big screen phones, while Apple users kept asking Apple for something bigger. I remember this. We all remember the iPhone that was so small and we wanted something bigger, and Apple eventually answered with the iPhone 6. That was the first real departure from its smaller designs, and it was a massive hit, and that move cemented Apple's dominance. But now the sales numbers are showing a different story. Once again, the focus is where it was before, the screen. But here's the twist. Globally, Samsung has actually been winning for years. In 2024, Samsung shipped 260 million smartphones compared to Apple's 230 million. Apple makes more profit per device, but in terms of raw units, Samsung has been the #1 smartphone maker worldwide for over a decade. The reason this US shift matters so much is because America is Apple's fortress. It's supposed to be the place where Apple always wins, and it's one of the markets where Samsung has always struggled. And if that fortress starts to crumble, well, the global balance of power could actually change. Okay, so why is Samsung suddenly surging in the United States? Well, part of it comes down to foldables. When Samsung launched its first foldable years ago, it looked like a gimmick because people were like, do we really need this? But fast forward to now, and the Galaxy Z Flip 7 and Fold 7 are hitting mainstream adoption. In the US, younger people are especially drawn to something that feels more futuristic, something different from the same flat rectangle that we've literally had for 15 years. Apple still doesn't have a foldable phone on the market. And this is crazy to me because Samsung, Huawei, Xiaomi, they've all been doing this now for years. Another reason is AI. Samsung's Galaxy S25 series launched with a deep integration of Google Gemini, which makes AI part of daily life. If you want to summarize a meeting, draft a message, translate something in real time, the phone can do it all. Samsung made AI practical while Apple has rolled it out more slowly and cautiously. Siri is kind of dumb. Then there's pricing. Samsung plays the full field budget Galaxy A series phones for a few $100s, its flagship S series for around $1,000, and foldables that are higher. But Apple is stuck in a much tighter band between about $830 and $1,600. And in today's economy, when people are more price sensitive, that flexibility matters. You can capture a lot more people if the cost of your phones have a bigger range. And then there's marketing. Samsung has always poked fun at Apple, but in 2025, their ads are actually sharper. They're going directly at Apple's weaknesses, which is no foldable, limited AI, and a design that just hasn't changed much in years. That to me explains the surge. But it also makes me wonder, if Samsung has been the world's biggest smartphone maker for so long, why has it always lagged so far behind in the US? The answer is actually partially cultural. For years, the blue bubble versus the green bubble divided Americans. I've even met girls who say they will not date a guy who has the green bubble. And there's the joke that nobody wants to be the green bubble in the group chat. And finally, there's perception. In much of the world, Android is just normal, but in America, Android often has been seen as kind of cheaper or a less premium alternative, and that image stuck and it held Samsung back. So does Samsung's headquarters in Korea actually care about fixing this? Because think about it, Samsung is selling everywhere around the world. Is the US market that important? Well, the answer is yes. The US market is hugely important for a couple reasons. First, prestige. Beating Apple on its home turf is quite symbolic. The second are profits, right? Americans are willing to pay $1,000 for a phone, and carriers subsidize those prices a lot of times. The margins here are better than almost anywhere else. And third, Third, partnerships. Doing well in the US strengthens Samsung's ties to Google, to Qualcomm, and the whole Android ecosystem. For Samsung, America is the ultimate battleground. But while Samsung has momentum, it's also true that Apple is showing some big cracks here. See, iPhone sales are plateauing because almost everyone who wants an iPhone already has one, and upgrade cycles are getting longer. People are keeping their phones now for 3 or 4 years instead of 1 or 2. And let's be honest, every time a new iPhone comes out, it's become the norm to make fun of it because almost nothing is new. But here's where things get interesting. WhatsApp is finally gaining popularity in America, and for decades, WhatsApp was the default messaging app everywhere else, like Europe or Latin America or many parts of Asia. But in the US, SMS and iMessage have always ruled. But now that's shifting. Downloads of WhatsApp in the US hit record highs in 2024 and 2025. Gen Z is particularly adopting it for international travel, for group chats, for dating. Meta is leaning into this with features like encrypted messaging, voice notes, and business tools. So if WhatsApp becomes the standard in America, then the whole blue bubble versus green bubble stigma loses power, right? Nobody cares. And suddenly switching from an iPhone to a Samsung doesn't mean you're socially cut off. And for Apple, this is dangerous. So it's actually Meta that's almost driving this a lot more than Samsung, because Apple's entire dominance in America has been built off the stickiness of the iMessage. But again, if that stickiness weakens, so does Apple's strength. Okay, but we cannot deny that Apple has some of the strongest brand loyalty in the world. Surveys show that over 90% of iPhone users plan to stick with Apple. Let's be honest, we have the ecosystem of AirPods, Apple Watch, MacBook. That all makes switching painful. And the iPhone still does carry a premium image in the US that most Androids don't, but loyalty is not infinite. If Samsung keeps innovating while Apple still plays it safe, people are gonna start to wonder if they're getting enough for their money. Eventually, you see the guy at the coffee shop with a really cool phone, and you're like, I want that. This isn't just a tech story, it's a money story. See, Apple makes enormous margins on every iPhone it sells, and if it's forced to compete harder with Samsung on price, those margins shrink. Apple is one of the world's most valuable companies, worth over $3 trillion at its peak. And if investors see slowing iPhone sales, that valuation could wobble, just like it has before when those sales in China disappointed. For Samsung, America is the crown jewel. Yes, they already lead in global shipments, but winning more market share in the US means more profits, more brand prestige, and more leverage with the carriers. So for them, this fight is about more than units sold, it's about reshaping their image. And for now, Apple should be very happy that Huawei and Xiaomi are not allowed to be sold in the United States. It's only having to deal with Samsung. Okay, so where does all of this go? Even though so many people are stuck in Apple's ecosystem, Samsung has its own ecosystem, and you could argue that it's even bigger. In addition to your tablet, your watch, your laptop, your phone, Samsung also literally makes refrigerators. They make washers and dryers. I visited their exhibit at CES in Las Vegas, and the amount of things that they produce is insane. They want to own the smart home so that everything inside your house is a Samsung device, and all the devices are talking to each other. And to me, this is a much bigger value proposition than just the tech that Apple sells. So to wrap up, the real question is this: are we finally entering a post-iPhone America, or will Apple finally remind us why they've been on top for 15 years? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you want to support this channel, please make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. We all do things to protect our homes, cars, and personal property from theft. But today, most of us don't think enough about our digital footprint. Cyber criminals stole $16.6 billion in the US alone in 2024. Right now, data brokers are collecting and selling personal information for profit. Names, addresses, social media profiles, court records, even social security numbers, all are being used to build detailed profiles on people like you and me. These profiles are often sold to advertisers, which is why you get flooded with spam emails, calls, and messages. But it doesn't stop there. That same data also ends up in the hands of scammers. That's where today's sponsor, Incogni, comes in. Incogni automatically reaches out to data brokers on your behalf, requests that they delete your personal data, and handles any pushback, keeping your info from landing on the black market. They also offer ongoing protection by performing repeat removals, making sure your data stays off these lists if they ever reappear. And if you upgrade to their unlimited plan, you unlock custom removals, where Incogni targets specific brokers or data types you want removed. It's extra control and peace of mind. Getting started is easy. Just create an account and give Incogni permission to work for you. That's it. Take control of your data and protect yourself from hacks and scams. Click the link in my description to get started. You'll be helping to support this channel and get 60% off the annual Incogni plan. I'm really glad tools like Incogni exist because they make personal privacy protection simple.